Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, and for today's audio-visual entertainment extravaganza we have an HMS Fiji replay for you, courtesy of Wombat Warrior. I'm not quite sure whether or not he thinks he's being funny putting that camo on a British light cruiser, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Speaking of HMS Fiji, I do have a couple of confessions to make. The first one is slightly embarrassing. I'd never actually heard of Crown Colony class cruisers like the Fiji until I started playing World of Warships. Well, that's not actually strictly true. I mean, I knew all about HMS Fiji. I knew that it was lost in May 1941 during the Battle of Crete when the commander of the Mediterranean fleet, Admiral Cunningham, sent both the Fiji and the Gloucester back to recover survivors from HMS Greyhound. Cunningham wrote in a letter to the First Sea Lord, "The sending back of Gloucester and Fiji to Greyhound was a grave error and cost us those two ships. They were practically out of ammunition, but even had they been full up, I think they would have gone. The commanding officer of Fiji told me that the air over Gloucester was black with planes." What I didn't know was that the Fiji was a Crown Colony class cruiser. I'd never heard of them. The Fiji was the lead ship of the Crown Colony class. I'd heard of the Leanders that preceded them, and I'd heard of the Town class like the Edinburgh and the Belfast that came after the Crown Colony class, but I had never actually heard of this specific class of ship until I started playing World of Warships. The other confession that I have to make regarding the Fiji is that it's probably my favourite ship in World of Warships. I know I'm supposed to love the Warspite, and I do love the Warspite, but I love the Warspite more for its rich history, although it's still a great ship to play. But the Fiji is absolutely fantastic. The British light cruiser line in World of Warships is a bit of a struggle, particularly once you've managed to get to Tier 5 and you have to play the god-awful HMS Emerald, which is basically just a floating citadel. Things do get a bit better at Tier 6 when you unlock the Leander. The Leander isn't bad, it's actually quite fun to play. But the Leander, while it's good, is just a warm-up for the Fiji at Tier 7. By light cruiser standards, she's actually fairly big. She's certainly a lot bigger than the Leander. In particular, she has a wider beam, and the reason for that wider beam is so that they could fit the Mark 23 152mm gun turrets, which sport 3 guns per turret rather than the Leander's 2 guns per turret. And that gives the Fiji significantly better firepower, 1 extra gun per turret with the same 7.5 second reload. The guns also have more than 2 kilometers increased firing range over the Leander, and she also retains the Leander's 8 kilometer range Mark 9 torpedoes. Also, despite being a bigger ship, she also has a much more powerful engine, 80,000 versus the Leander's 72,000 horsepower, and she retains that traditional Royal Navy, fantastic acceleration and deceleration. She has very, very good handling for a ship of this size, with an incredibly tight turning circle and a very good rudder shift. Now, while she's not quite as stealthy as the Leander, and not many ships are as stealthy as the Leander at Tier 6 has the best surface detection of any non-premium Tier 6 cruiser, but the Fiji is still fairly sneaky, with a base surface detection range of only 11.52 kilometers, and that's of course before you start adding things like camo and the concealment expert skill. You can see that Wombat Warrior has managed to get his surface detection range down to only 10.1 kilometers, which is very, very good for a Tier 7 cruiser. Did that Gnevny just run himself aground? Oh, he did. Well, there's the first kill. Sadly, it wasn't first blood because somebody just managed to nail one of Wombat Warrior's team's destroyers, the Akizuki. So they've traded a very good Tier 8 destroyer for a not that good Tier 6 destroyer. That's not a good trade. Although I'm fairly sure that this Vladivostok has bitten off a lot more than he can comfortably chew. And he's not going to survive this. No way. He should never have come in here. He's taking crossfire. Doesn't matter which way he turns, he's giving broadside to somebody. So the Vladivostok is doomed. It's just a question of how long it's going to take us to sink him and who's going to get the kill. He's turning broadside on Wombat Warrior, and that's not actually a bad choice considering what's shooting at him from the right-hand side of the screen. There's a bunch of battleships over there. So he's turning to bow tank them, which is giving Wombat Warrior the opportunity to get some torpedoes away and subject him to a withering hail of 152mm armour piercing right into the upper belt and the superstructure, and he's taking a lot of damage. It's kind of surprising that the Vladivostok even came in here in the first place, because his torpedo beat skills are actually pretty good. He's managed to avoid all of Wombat's torpedoes, and while he probably didn't actually see them until... Oh, did you see the fireworks going off there? He's got the Nikolai Kuznetsov, Captain. The automatic, oh, I'm on less than 10% health, damage control and heal just triggered. And he's managed to successfully torpedo beat everything, but there's just too much fire coming in from too many different directions. He's close enough to spot Wombat firing from smoke, but his guns are all, well, yeah. There's Wombat's second kill. I have no idea what Vladivostok was doing in that position. It was suicidal, but, you know, good. That's 3 enemy ships down, and we've still only lost the one Akazuki. And from here, of course, no direct line of sight between him and the Dunkirk over there, who had the sense to try to hide, and so he's able to just lob shells clean over the top of both of these islands without being spotted, at least until the enemy Graf Zeppelin decides to send some more aircraft back over here. So the battle's actually going reasonably well. They've lost an Akazuki, which is, you know, not good, but they've knocked out an enemy top-tier battleship, the Vladivostok, Gnevny, which is, okay, it's only tier 6, and a Nürnberg, which is only tier 6, but it's a pretty good tier 6 cruiser. And surely that Dunkirk is not going to last much longer. I mean, it's a fairly fast tier 6 battleship, but in order to put that speed to use, he's going to have to turn around, and he's got a battleship on each side. There's a Mutsu on this side, although it doesn't have a line of sight on him just yet, but he's also taken fire from an Ismail. And he was taking fire from a Nürnberg, but he's decided he's going to go down fighting, and he's managed to kill the Nürnberg. He's managed to get a heal off as well, so he's going to... Oh, he's on very, very low health. But surely the Ismail can take him out. This guy down here. I got to admit, I'm left kind of wondering exactly what it is, there he is, that Ismail is scared of. He's currently got about 15 times as much health as the Dunkirk currently has. He's got more guns, and they're bigger, and he's got better armour. So I'm pretty sure at this point everybody's thinking, well, the Ismail's got this. It's time for us to be somewhere else. Wombat Warrior's already on the move. He can't even shoot at the Dunkirk anymore. The Mutsu is already on the move. The Charles Martel is just sitting behind the island waiting for the Dunkirk to die so he can leave. So while we're waiting for the Ismail to finish the job on the Dunkirk, let's just talk about the downsides of the Fiji. In fact, this isn't going to take very long at all, because even if you go to the World of Warships wiki page and look at the pros and cons of HMS Fiji, I can't help but feel that they're really stretching to try to fill out the list of downsides. In fact, realistically, I'd say that it only really has one, and that's a long citadel and weak athwartships armour. The athwartships armour is the armour that goes across the beam from side to side, facing forward and aft. And what that means is that, in common with all of the other British light cruisers, it's very easy for a battleship to citadel the Fiji from the front. How's the Ismail doing? Still got all of his health, still hasn't managed to sink the Dunkirk. In fact, the Mutsu's just fired from the other side. And it's the Mutsu who is the ship that finally manages to put the Dunkirk down. That Dunkirk lasted way longer than it should have. And in the length of time that it took the Mutsu to sail all the way around that island and do the Ismail's job for him, the enemy team have managed to even the scores just about, and we are now even on kills. So the early advantage has been completely wasted. I suppose we should say well done to the Dunkirk for surviving as long as he did, and well done to the enemy team for managing to regain parity with almost half of the match timer expired. So there's still everything to play for. Now then, Colorado. Wombat Warrior, of course, nice and safe inside a smokescreen. Oh, hang on a second, Belfast, very, very dangerous ship. If you get the opportunity to shoot at one, you absolutely should. The Belfast's gone undetected. Torpedoes in the water against the Colorado. And we've got an interesting situation developing here. The Colorado is turning away. There aren't many battleship drivers that like to actually approach smoke screens, because smoke screens have a nasty habit of spitting torpedoes out. But turning away like this means that he's giving broadside to the Mutsu. However, if you look at the minimap, the Mutsu has managed to put an island on his port side, which means he's forced to give broadside to the Colorado. So you've got two 16-inch gun-armed battleships leathering the crap out of each other, but the Colorado has better armour, and the Mutsu is also being shot at by a Prinz Eugen and that Belfast and the smokescreen over there. So the Mutsu is the one who goes down. Basically, the Mutsu zigged when it should have zagged, and the Colorado, while it has taken a lot of damage, has survived. One of the other downsides that the World of Warships wiki page lists for the Fiji, and it's really struggling to find bad things to say about this ship, is its merely average anti-aircraft firepower. Merely average. It's not the same as bad, though, is it? I mean, if it was bad, they would have said bad anti-aircraft firepower. They didn't. They said merely average. They're really struggling here, aren't they? They also said fairly ineffective against angled enemy battleships. Well, isn't everybody? I mean, aside from heavy cruisers with 8-inch guns and high explosive shells and, you know, the Conqueror, isn't everybody fairly ineffective against angled battleships? Let's see, what other bad things do they say about the Fiji? Respectable firing range, but shell velocity drops off sharply after medium range, so just like every American light cruiser out there, although the Fiji boasts superior initial shell velocity in the first place. And also, and this is pretty much it, and I love this one, worse secondary batteries than the Leander. So like I said, really struggling to find bad things to say about this ship. One very good thing about this ship, and something that tends to catch people by surprise, is the 114mm of belt armour. Even though the bow, stern, deck and Citadel thwartships armour is garbage, the belt armour is not. And angled, and yep, minimal damage from the Belfast. The Belfast firing armour piercing, which is bizarre because it's the only British light cruiser that can actually fire high explosive, still does next to 0 damage. Is he going to switch to the high explosive? No, he's still firing armour piercing, still doing almost no damage, and he's dead. And that's something about the Fiji that really does tend to catch people by surprise. It has surprisingly tough belt armour, which is only effective if you're angled correctly. 114mm of belt is going to be no protection whatsoever, even against other light cruisers, if you're showing broadside. But if you angle, you'd be amazed at the shots that this thing can bounce. Just don't expect it to save you from getting shot at by battleships. That would be asking just a little bit too much. So, Wombat Warrior is turning back to the south. There's a Bayern, a Prinz Eugen, and potentially there's also a Lightning over there. In fact, it's very likely that the Lightning is in there, so he's fired off his hydroacoustic search. All of his other consumables are ready to go. He's not heading in here alone. There is a Gneisenau coming with him. Yep, there's the Lightning, as expected. He's almost certainly going to pop smoke, dump torpedoes and get the hell out of here, which could make life very interesting for the Gneisenau. The friendly carrier, the Implacable, is also sending aircraft over here. Wombat slows, pops his own smoke, dumps his own torpedoes in the water. It's highly unlikely that any of those torpedoes are going to hit the Lightning. If the Lightning has any sense, he's using that smoke screen to get the hell out of there, because there are torpedo bombers coming, which... Ooh, looks like they're going for the Prinz Eugen. Now this is a serious error of judgment from the Prinz Eugen. He was safe, he'd made it behind the island, and then he started turning, which involved giving broadside to the torpedo bombers, and now broadside to the Fiji and the Gneisenau. So he's just managed to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Here come the Lightning's torpedoes, but Hydro was running. The Gneisenau, knowing that the Lightning was there, took the corner narrow, managed to avoid them all, and thanks to the Fiji's superb handling, in particular its acceleration, Wombat has managed to avoid all of those torpedoes as well. And that fatal error in judgment there from the Prinz Eugen, I have no idea what he thought he was going to achieve by turning back in when he'd made it into concealment, but, well, there's kill number 4 for Wombat Warrior. Lightning there, all the way to the south, shooting at the Gneisenau. Good play from the Lightning there. Didn't hang around and wait to be spotted when the smoke cleared, just used the smoke as a get-out-of-jail-free card, dumped his torpedoes and then relocated. Torpedoes in the water up ahead, obviously from the Prinz Eugen, and they haven't hit anything. Did the Prinz Eugen commit to the turn, realise, oh no, I'm going to die, and just dump the torpedoes out of desperation, or did he deliberately turn in order to fire the torpedoes and threw away a practically full health Tier 7 cruiser by broadsiding a Fiji and a Gneisenau? I know which I think is most likely. But then again, I do always tend to suspect the worst by default, and there's the Kraken Unleashed, kill number 5, took out the Bayern. So that leaves that Mogami, the Lightning, and the Graf Zeppelin. And the Graf Zeppelin is going for Wombat. Rocket attack planes. They could do a fairly significant amount of damage. He's got a good angle for it as well. That could have been worse, could have been better. T-61 over there on very low health. He's just hiding behind the island and hoping that his torpedoes do the job on the enemy Mogami. The Atlanta is coming under rocket attack and is exchanging fire with the Lightning, and believe it or not, the Lightning is actually shooting back at the Atlanta. Now that might seem like suicide, a destroyer deliberately engaging an Atlanta in a gunfight, but well, here's the thing. The Lightning actually has superior firing range, and he's making the most of it, and because the Atlanta is tucked in against the island there, he can't manoeuvre. And the Lightning was actually winning that fight, and I think the only thing that saved him was the arrival of the friendly Implacable's rocket attack planes, which forced the Lightning to smoke up. Now, he was aided by the enemy Graf Zeppelin, who dropped a fighter squadron on top of his smoke screen to ward off those rocket attack planes. And while Wombat Warrior is clearly sneaking around this side of the island in an effort to attempt to ambush that Lightning, I'd be very surprised if the Lightning was still inside that smoke screen, because there are no longer enemy aircraft lurking overhead, thanks to the Graf Zeppelin's fighter squadron, to spot him when he exits the smoke. I would have expected the Lightning to be coming in this direction to try to outflank the remainder of Wombat Warrior's team. But against all expectations, he is actually still inside the smoke screen. So let's see how the Lightning handles this, because if he starts shooting now, he's dead. He'll never go undetected. He's lost a good old chunk of health. There goes the engine boost. Yeah, he's not going to shoot, he's just going to get the hell out of here. Break detection, stay outside of hydro range, and go dark. The Megami, by the way, has finished off the T-61. And the Atlanta looks like he's in all kinds of trouble. And that is very bad news for Wombat Warrior. He could really use the Atlanta down here, both for his anti-aircraft firepower and his radar. Because Wombat Warrior is now in the worst possible position he could be. Caught between the Graf Zeppelin and the Lightning. I don't get it. What's the big deal? It's only a carrier. Just sink it. You must be new here. And it's not just any old carrier. It's a Graf Zeppelin. That thing's basically a battleship with a flight deck. It's got 32mm of armour. And it's got more secondaries than the Bismarck. And credit where credit's due, the Graf Zeppelin is doing exactly the right thing. He's turning in and he's basically bow tanking. And 32mm of bow armour, that's the same as a tier 8, 9 or 10 battleship. How effective is 152mm armour piercing against battleships that are bow tanking? Because that is basically the situation. That was a nice dodge, by the way, well done. Hooray for the Fiji's superb handling, but how effective is 152mm AP against a bow tanking battleship? Because that's basically the situation that Wombat Warrior is in here. Yes, not very effective at all. One penetration, everything else bounced. Took one torpedo there. There are torpedoes from the Lightning. One of the good things about taking British light cruisers is that they're very cheap when it comes to commander skill points, because all you really need is a 10-point captain. Just take Concealment Expert and you're done. Other light cruisers pretty much require the IFHE skill, but British cruisers, with the exception of the Premium Belfast, don't fire high explosive shells, so hooray. Except in a situation like this, you really want high explosive ammunition so you can do some damage to a bow tanking aircraft carrier from a safe enough distance that you're not getting shredded by its ridiculous secondaries. The only real trade-off for the Graf Zeppelin here is that in order to successfully bow tank 6-inch armour piercing shells, he has to keep the bows pointing more or less towards the threat, and that means he can't bring all of the secondaries to bear. So there is at least that. But if this had been a destroyer and not a light cruiser, the Graf Zeppelin would have survived and the destroyer would have died. And that's kill number 6. Oh, and the other 3 members of the team between them have managed to kill the Megami, and they only lost 1 ship doing it. Well done. Can we get some support down here, please? Before that Lightning kills us. We could, I don't know, maybe use some aircraft to spot it, or... Atlanta has radar, doesn't it? Well, at least they're heading in this direction. More Lightning torpedoes, and the Implacable is sending aircraft down. Of course, even though he's low on health, that Lightning is anything but a pushover. The British destroyers have some of the hardest hitting destroyer high explosive shells in the game, second only to the Japanese, and with the exception of the Akazuki, Kitakaze and Harugamo, they have far better gun handling. Yep, he's opened up, he was about to be spotted by aircraft, he realised he had nothing to lose, and you can see how hard these shots are actually hitting. At the end of the day, this is still just a light cruiser with light cruiser deck, bow and stern armour, and if not for the fact that he did take a strike from the rocket attack planes, it's possible that the Lightning might have actually won this fight. But he did take a strike from the rocket attack planes, and so he didn't win that fight, and that was Wombat Warrior's 7th kill. And on that bombshell, that's it for today. Wombat Warrior, well done. Everybody else, I hope you enjoyed it, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.